constantly be looking for the things that bring you fulfillment, that make you feel good about yourself, important in terms of protecting other people's lives, protecting your own life, protecting the lives of your teammates along the way. I'm a husband, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I'm a firefighter, I'm a lot of different things. But I would say right now, my number one priority is being a father. Every time I do a podcast, there's a little baby waving at the door, smiling. Your schedule changes. It's like a complete 180 in your life, and then all of a sudden that's just not an option anymore. So like, oh yeah, I have this list of values. People complain about the weather no matter where you are, whether it's too cold or it's too hot.
Hello, my name is AXEL, and this time I'm here with the Canadian native Mark Novak. So hello, Mark, and tell me, who are you?
Who am I? That's a good question, and I think it's one that changes a lot. And it's interesting because we did this interview around 7 months ago, and then Axel destroyed it because it was too good, right? That's what you said. And so we're redoing it, and I feel like I've changed in that time. And when we first did it, we had just had our son, Leo, Julie, and I. And so I described myself as a father. And at the time, I don't think I fully understood what that meant because it's a completely life-changing experience, right? So people will always say that before you have a kid, like, oh, just wait, like it'll change your life. It's life-changing, all these things. But when you actually experience it, you realize that it truly is life-changing in the sense that your schedule changes, everything changes. They're there right now, they're at the door. Now there's every time I do a podcast, there's a little baby waving at the door, smiling. Your schedule changes, your sleep patterns change, your priorities change. It's like a complete 180 in your life. So I think a lot of times that can be stressful because you're used to doing things one way, and then all of a sudden that's just not an option anymore. So I would say I am a father and one who's learning along the way. I'm a husband, I'm a coach, I'm a teacher, I'm a firefighter, I'm a lot of different things. But I would say right now, my number one priority is being a father, which is constantly evolving.
Right. We spoke about this earlier as well. As adults, for us, of course, we can do a lot of things in one day, but for us, the change isn't as rapid as it is for a kid, right? So you living through this right now, is there a part of you that you would like to set some sort of a routine, or are you just enjoying this moment? Because we very well know that kids grow up and like this moment was just so short in a way, but you have to like do the best part in that. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, that's something that's actually been a struggle in the sense that there'll be times where you're thinking to yourself, oh, I can't wait till he can crawl around, or I can't wait till he's walking, or I can't wait till him and I can do this activity like play catch or play sports or whatever. And then you catch yourself getting antsy, like in the sense that like you're wanting something to happen before it's ready. So I always have to remind myself to, like you said, enjoy the moment for what it is. Like really look for the things that he's doing now because he's never going to do them again because they change literally in a day. One day he'll be one way, and then the next day all of a sudden he's doing something new, and the way he was before is just gone forever. So that's something I always have to remind myself of, is being present with him and being just aware of what he's doing and not getting caught up in like, oh, I can't wait till he does this, because he'll get there eventually. But the key is just being present, which is having a kid is something, it makes you very aware of whether you're present or not. Because even when I'm with him, sometimes like I'll go on my phone and then I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I on my phone when I have my son right here? So it makes you very aware. And also he makes you very aware, because if you do something like that, when you're watching him, you go on your phone, then he'll start yelling or he'll start doing something to not annoy you, but like get your attention. So it's he's a presence focusing device in a sense, where he forces you to be present at all times, which is kind of cool.
A bit early to talk about this already with your son as right now, but maybe there is already something that you would like him to achieve, right? And do you like look that far ahead, or how do you feel your parenting style will be in the future in a way as well?
Yeah, that's another thing that I've thought a lot about, and I think the answer to that is I don't really have any, or I try not to have any expectations for what I want him to achieve because I feel like that's a surefire way to push him into things that he may not enjoy. Um, what I do want to do is continue to pursue the things that I enjoy with him around. Like I want to be able to do weightlifting, Olympic weightlifting if I'm still doing that, or exercising or playing sports. And I want to be able to include him in those things, being outside, going for hikes. But I don't want to force him to play a sport that I like. I just want him to see me doing those things and include him. And if he loves them, then I would obviously encourage that. But I don't feel like there are specific things I want him to achieve. Maybe there's specific values that I'd want him to learn, but really that comes down to me instilling those values in myself and continuing to live them so that he gets to see them and experience them.
Well, a good thing that you touched upon those values. Maybe you can like introduce more about yourself. Like, what are your like values that you like? Some of your values, like what? How do you live life by?
Yeah, so that's another thing that I feel like can constantly change. Like you can change your values with a lot of thought and after going through certain experiences in life. So I would say my values have changed since I was 20 till now when I'm 32. And the one that stands out would be family. Like Julie, Leo would be the two most important things in my life now. And from that value of family, a lot of things come from that. And if your value is family, then it makes decisions easy regarding that, right? Like if your number one value is family, and yet every weekend you're going out and you're golfing all day and you're not spending time with your family, then maybe that isn't your value, or maybe you're not aligned with that value. Um, Whereas if it is your value, then you can make decisions easy in the sense of like, maybe I'm not going to golf all weekend. I'm going to spend time with my family. So that would be my number one value. Another one that I think is really important for me would be strength. And I don't think that's just physical strength. Like I value being physically strong because in my job, that's something that you need to be. You need to have stamina, you need to have endurance, you need to have strength as a firefighter because you're doing things that are important in terms of protecting other people's lives, protecting your own life, protecting the lives of your teammates. So for me, that's something that's really valuable in a physical sense. But I also think that being strong encapsulates more than just physical strength. That's going to be strong in the sense of having hard conversations. And for me, that's something that's very difficult because I'm not normally a extremely open person. I don't like having certain types of conversations, harder conversations to have. And that's something that I've had to learn over time, especially with my relationship with Julie. She's much more open about having deeper conversations. So for me, that's been a part of my value, has been becoming more mentally strong in the sense of having difficult conversations, and also just being strong in the sense that other people can rely on you. When they ask you to do something, you do it. When they're having a hard time, they know you can be there for them. So I would say that's another value that I have that is at the top of my list. And there's other ones. I would say being honest is one that is really important to me and one I've had to learn the importance of over time. And that would be another one as well. So I have a list of different values that are important to me. And like I said, they change over time. And when you experience certain things over and over again in life, you start to realize what's important to you. But they are things that you need to be aware of and you need to put some thought into. But once you do, I would say they make things a lot easier. Because if you have a decision to make, instead of just kind of going by feel, you can look at your list of values and see which decision aligns more with your values than the other. And once you do that, then you're like, oh, I'll do this instead of that because it aligns with who I want to be, who I'm striving to be, and what my values are.
Can you touch upon that? Like, how do you, let's say, maintain that thing? Because, like you said, like prior, you have to install and work on them. It's not like you just install it and leave it as it is. You just have to run some sort of a maintenance on that as well, right? So, can you touch upon on how do you maintain your values? Or
Yeah. So the way I first started them or just had the idea of doing them was from a website. It's a blog called The Art of Manliness. And they had a whole write up on the importance of having values, why you should have values, how to come up with your own. And I remember reading that and they had a process you could go through. And I don't remember it exactly, but basically they had like a massive list of different principles or values, strength, integrity, honor, like all these things. And he said basically go through the list and circle 10 that are the most important to you. Once you have your list of 10, then narrow it down to the 5 most important ones. So if 2 are kind of alike, choose between those 2, like strength and I don't know, uh, discipline or something. Like choose between those 2 until you get to 3 to 5. And then once you have those 3 to 5 values, then spend some time, take 10 minutes and just write down like what does strength mean to me? What does honesty mean to me? What does family mean to me? And once you write like for 10 minutes, you just kind of free write, then you have a really good idea of what that value means to you. And it's easier to start making decisions with those in mind once you've gone through that process. And I would say over time, in terms of maintaining those values, it's just coming back to them in the sense that, like I said, when you do have to make decisions, instead of getting caught up in that emotional feelings type decision making process where you're like, I don't know what to do. Like, this idea is really good, but I also want to do this. And then other people's opinions start coming in, your friends, your family, and getting caught up in that whirlwind, being like, oh, yeah, I have this list of values, and going back to it and kind of cross referencing and seeing which decision makes the most sense based on those values. And then also just being self aware. Like, if you're noticing that something's coming up again and again, like maybe I'm not being 100% honest all the time, and that's bringing this up, that's causing conflict in this way, then realizing like, oh, maybe this is a value that I need to, honesty is a value I need to install in my life and be more aware of and be more vigilant about making sure that I'm sticking true and holding true to that. So I think when certain experiences come up for you again and again and again in different scenarios, then it's important to be self aware enough to say, why is this coming up and what lesson is it teaching me? And if you can look at it through the lens of what value do I need to embody in this experience and what value am I not maybe embodying in this experience, and how is this leading to a negative or positive outcome, I think that's a good way to maintain it. Just being self aware.
Well, since you now have a kid and you're raising a boy, right? And you were a boy yourself once upon a time, right? Tell me, do you have at some point some sort of flashbacks or some sort of a remembrance of like, oh, I could have done this better if I would have, been older, or if I knew this? And then do you have like these moments of like teachings that you would like to have him have a better experience where you maybe didn't had the best experience? And can you tell me more about your own experiences in the past as you were a kid?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think that's something that's important for everyone to do, is kind of look back on their own experience growing up and look at things that helped them and things that they would want to repeat, in the sense of you look back and you're like, wow, my parents did this for me and it really helped me do this, so I want to do that again. But also on the flip side, like my parents did this and it didn't help me, so I don't want to do that thing. And I don't think it's a situation of trying to blame people. Most of the time, people are doing the best that they can with the information they have at hand. So it's important not to get into the blame game. But I would say something that I would want to pass on would be, that's a good question. And that's a very good question. I would say just embracing failure in the sense of a lot of times parents can get caught up in the end result or they overlook the process. And a lot of people I've talked to in my own life, a lot of people I've talked to on my podcast, a lot of experiences that I've had personally have shown me that failing is the best way that we learn. So if you're not embracing the process and rewarding the process or rewarding failure, then I see that as a extreme limiting factor for anyone, whether it's in athletics or academics or developing your financial sense or developing in relationships. I think failure is really important. And that is something that I want to instill in him, that it's good to fail, but it's also good to learn from your failures, right? Like you want to be on the edge, in sports, right? Like you don't want to be practicing in your zone of comfort where you're like, oh, I can do this move in basketball every single time 100%. So I'm just going to practice that over and over. No, you push yourself and you try and learn a new move in practice, and you'll mess up multiple times, but eventually your body and your brain start connecting and you learn that skill, and then you can apply it in a game. And in a game, perhaps it's not going to work 100% of the time, but you're always on that edge pushing yourself. And I see myself sometimes being afraid to fail and not wanting to put myself to that edge all the time because it feels good to not mess up. Like it feels good to do that move you know that you're going to hit 100% of the time because it's successful. But where you see real progress and where you see real growth is on that edge. And if you're on that edge, you're going to fail. So for me, I would want to instill that in him, that it's good to fail, it's good to grow, and not to worry about what other people think or what you think they might be thinking. Just to go out there and have fun with failing.
Formula One or in driving in itself, they call that being driving to the limit, right? Then when they're on the edge, right, having that limit. And as you learn about more and more and more about the races and how the racers approach the game of racing itself, you can understand it better, and you learn about the tracks and like in all the difficulties in within them and the speed limits and so on, what they're approaching, and how what it actually means taking to the limit. But you touched a bit about sports as well. You mentioned example of basketball and so on. Maybe you can tell me more about your sporting experiences. When did sport came into your life, and what have been your experiences with sport, and what have sport taught you?
Yeah, I definitely never really played anything at a high level or anything like that, but I was always extremely into any type of sport, whether it was I was playing soccer, cross country, baseball, hockey. I was kind of doing it all. Badminton, I loved. So for me, uh, I think you can learn any lesson that you want from sports. You can learn to be a terrible person from sports. You can learn to be selfish. You can learn to be a bad teammate. You can learn to be obnoxious and annoying, but you can also learn so many amazing things. Like you can learn to be disciplined. You can learn to be, or you can learn the value of teamwork and where that can take you and what that can allow you to feel. So for me, it was just kind of playing any different sport I could growing up. And then as I got older, you grow up, you kind of stop. I think for a lot of people, like once you stop playing organized sports, then it's kind of like, well, I guess I'm not playing anymore. And then for a couple of years there, I wasn't playing organized sports, and I would say I was extremely depressed or anything, but I was just kind of bored. And then I got into working out, and I was doing CrossFit, and I started doing triathlons. And then eventually that led me to doing Olympic weightlifting, which I loved, and I don't do it as much as I used to, but I think that the biggest thing I always got out of playing sports or working out or training was seeing the effort that you put into something being tangibly rewarded. So you would put in a ton of work and then you'd say, oh wow, like I'm getting faster or I'm getting stronger. And I can see that in my times coming down, or I can see that in my weights going up. So you're always getting that feedback, and you're just always learning different lessons, and you're learning to be, like I said, more disciplined. You're learning to be more focused, but you're also having fun. And for me, it was the biggest thing I loved about sports was competing against other people and being around other people. Like I love training, but it's not just training I love. I love training with other people because you can laugh and have a good time and joke with people. And I think that is something that I've missed over the last year when we've been in lockdown. We haven't had that opportunity to train with other people and be around people. So for me, I do love sports, but I would say I love being around people and competing with people more than I love just the sport itself.
Describe the feeling that you have in weightlifting, like, because for example, it's probably way different than I don't know, in team sport where you have this feeling of team fluidity, that you like, that guy made a pass to that guy and that guy blocked, and there's a bucket or a goal or whatever the case may be. Or in individual sports where you have like this high of the speed, or whether it would be like in sprinting or boat racing or whatever the case may be. In weightlifting, it's this platform which is very limited, how far you can go, right? And there are the restrictions there. What's the, let's say, the runner's high, or what's the the feeling there that you strive for? Is it your own personal progress, or is there this almost undescribable feeling there is?
Yeah, it's very different from a team sport. And to be honest, I enjoy team sports more where you're competing against someone. It's awesome having an opponent there who you can play off of. You can kind of get under someone's skin, or someone raises their level and you have to kind of raise your own game to compete with them. So I love that variable opponent. And also, like whether I was playing soccer or hockey or whatever it was, I was always kind of like an annoying person, and I liked being the person to get under someone else's skin and try and knock them off their game. So, uh, in regards to team sports, I love that having an opponent there who you're physically matched up against. Whereas with, like you said, with individual sports, you're either like you're shooting a bow and arrow, or you're running, uh, or jumping by yourself, or you're lifting a weight. So I found it a lot harder to get into the right mindset when it came to weightlifting. With a team sport, you show up, there's someone there, and they're gonna set the tone, or you're gonna set the tone, and you can raise your game based on that. Whereas with weightlifting, it's just a barbell sitting there with weights on it, and you have to get into this mindset of lifting at, above, or close to your max, which depending on the day, you may not feel great that day, you may feel really good. So there's a lot more thinking that goes on, I find, with individual sports. There's no one else to rely on, it's just you. But I do find that it is kind of a team sport in the sense that if you're training with a group of people, like you build confidence through that. Or if you have a coach there with you, you build confidence through your coach. He's helping you, he's choosing your numbers, he's like changing your weights, he's getting you psyched up, like he's doing all these things for you. So, and if you're there with your team as well, like you have a team. But yeah, when you step on that platform and you hit the weight by yourself, no one else does it for you, it's a great feeling because it was you put in all the work. No one passed you the puck, no one like knocked an opponent down for you to get a clear break. It was you walked up to the bar, you put your hands on it and you lifted it, or you didn't. And I think there's lots of great lessons to be learned in individual sports as well. And just building confidence in yourself and your own abilities is one of those things. And being able to step up to a weight where you may have never lifted it before and then hitting it is an awesome feeling. So yeah, they're very different and I like them both, but yeah, I think they're also amazing in their own right.
At the beginning, you describe yourself a upmost, like, you know, the most important thing is for you being the father, right? But the list was somewhat long for you. You mentioned being a weightlifter, firefighter, and so on. So tell me, how do you combine those things, and what is the secret for you? Like, why are you doing that, all that mix of things?
Yeah, good question. I would say it's something that's constantly evolving, and it's like when you have lots of interests that like, I'm the kind of person where if I like something, I'm gonna go all in on it. So when I discovered weightlifting, even though I knew I wasn't gonna achieve at a high level, like I wasn't going to the Olympics, I wasn't going to nationals, like I went all in. Like I trained all the time. I was watching videos all the time. I was trying to read and learn as much as I could about the sport. So when you have that personality, it's also important to learn when to let go. So I have all these things I like doing, but it's also important to realize when those things aren't serving you, right? And after a while, weightlifting didn't necessarily serve me. Like if I want to be the best father I can be, then I probably shouldn't be spending 2 to 3 hours a day training as a weightlifter, right? It just doesn't make sense. So although you can give yourself all these different labels, it's important to know which ones are leading you to the ultimate destination that you want to get to. And if your main goal is to be a great father, then maybe certain things you did in when you were younger aren't the most important thing, right? So the most important thing now for me has been just looking for things that I can do in the time that I have that bring me the most enjoyment and make me feel the best and make me more active and uh, just put me in a good mental space. So at a certain point, weightlifting was kind of draining me. Like it's hard training physically and mentally, and it didn't put me in the best mood. Like I wasn't enjoying it because I was doing it by myself, which is not as fun. And I realized, you know what? Like, there's probably other things I could be doing with this time that would make me feel better, make me feel more fulfilled, and allow me to be a better husband and a better father. So, yeah, so there are all those labels and those things I like to do, but it's been a process of kind of weighing the cost versus the reward. So for me, even just going for a walk now, like before, if you told me like, oh, your exercise today is going to be going for a walk, I'd be like, not good enough. Like I need to be doing more, right? Whereas now, if I can go for a walk, just walk the dog with no music or no podcast, just me and my thoughts, then I find that returns a really great reward for me physically and mentally. So yeah, I do have all these labels, and I don't even remember what your question was, but I know it was a good one, and yeah, that would be my answer.
I asked this question to an Ethiopian guy, I asked this to a Brazilian guy, and so on. So I want to ask you this as well. How is it in Canada? Can you tell me more about Canada itself? And that's where you come from. And how was it growing up in Canada? And how is it living in Canada? Can you paint the picture?
Yeah, right now it's not the best because we're still locked down and borders are closed, you can't travel. Not a great place to be right now, but I suppose we're doing the things necessary to get back to life as normal. Growing up in Canada was awesome. I grew up in Toronto. I was almost right downtown. Like it was a 2 minute walk to the subway, and I could be at the Sky Dome, which is where the Jays play, or the ACC, which is where the Leafs play, in like 10, 15 minutes. So I was right downtown. And I think Canada is a very multicultural, very vibrant, really a cool city to grow up in. So as I got older and I
Canada
started,
is a great city. Is
or
that
sorry, Toronto. Toronto is a great city. Wow. And so as I got older and started working at more locations, different places, different industries, you just meet so many people from different walks of life, right? Um, and I think that's one of the coolest things about Toronto. And then obviously you are you're just forced to love hockey growing up in Toronto. Like that's kind of what you do. So I would say that's the other thing that I picked up from my time in Toronto. And then I think also Canadians just love the outdoors. We have so much outdoor space, national parks, lakes, rivers, everything. So I have a deep love and respect for nature, and I still try and get out every year to go on a canoe trip. So that's another thing that I think Canadians hold in common.
Mhm. Well, I heard Jordan Peterson say that you have to have a good humor to survive the Canadian winter, and I know that you lived in the quite opposite the contrast in Florida for a while, where it's whole year summer, right? So tell me, like, how can you compare the two, America and Canada? You know, it's somewhat contrast. It's on the same side of the world, but there are some magnificent differences, I would say.
Yeah, big differences. And it's another good question. And I should have mentioned winter because that's kind of the defining feature of life in Canada, where almost 6, 7 months of the year, well, probably 6 months of the year, it's cold and either snowing or raining. And yeah, it develops a certain temperament. You have to have a good sense of humor. I think you get a little bit grittier, a little bit, you're tougher for sure. You've spent most of your life in the winter. But I think at a certain point you can branch out and spend most of your time in somewhere that's warmer. The thing I've noticed is that between Florida and Canada is people complain about the weather no matter where you are, whether it's too cold or it's too hot. People complain about it, and it changes like that. Like here in Canada, people complain about it being too cold, and then spring comes and you get a really hot day and people are complaining about it being too hot within a span of a week. So uh, yeah, you definitely have to develop a sense of humor, a good sense of perspective. And I don't know, Florida's not like California where you have 75 degrees Fahrenheit all the time. Florida gets hot, and oh, Julie's here again. And it gets really hot.
Florida native.
Talking badly about my wife's home state, and so I have to be careful here. But Florida gets so hot to the point where like your eyelids are sweating and they're getting sticky, and you get like rashes because it's so hot and you're sweaty all the time. So it's not like you're living in utopia down there. And what happens, the same thing happens in Florida that happens in Canada. In the winter, you go from your heated house to your heated car to your heated place of work. And then you come back home and you spend very little time outside. And in the summer of Florida, they do the same thing. They stay in the AC in their home, they get in their air conditioned car, go to work, and then they come right back home and they do the same thing unless you have to work outside. And I've spent winters working outside, which is not fun, but I think I would rather spend a winter working outside in the winter than I would in the hot summer in Florida. So there are differences, but there are also similarities to the two places. I love them both.
Can you tell me, is there one thing or something special about you that only you possess or very few people on this planet possess?
I think everyone has that special perspective, right? Everyone has a different upbringing, whether you grow up in the same place or not. Everyone, and from that different upbringing and from that different perspective, only you can bring that true essence of yourself to the world. So I don't think I'm uh, particularly talented in any one area differently than someone else. But when you have that blend of different talents that you might have and that different perspective that you bring, then you're bringing value in that sense. So I think everyone has a different perspective based on their upbringing and things they've read and things they've watched and friends they have and experiences they've had. And that's what brings you your unique point of view to things. So I would say, yeah, I would say my point of view is unique and special in the same sense that yours is. So I think it's important to embrace that because I think a lot of times we kind of think like, oh, I would do this, but someone else is already doing it. I would start a podcast, but like everyone's already doing a podcast, or everyone, like everything that's been painted has been painted, or whatever it may be creatively. But I would say that, like I said, everyone has their own unique perspective, their own unique style, their own unique way of doing things, their own special blend of skills. So yeah, I think it's important to pursue whatever you're interested in creatively, despite the fact that everyone else is doing it.
Is there a moment of your life that you would look back and would like to go and play on a loop and relive that again and again and again?
Oh, that is a good question. Yeah, there's a lot of moments. I think like having experienced Leo's birth was pretty cool. It was a pretty traumatic experience in many ways, but also a pretty amazing experience. So being able to go back and experience that with a kind of a outsider's view instead of being so caught up in the moment would be pretty cool to be on loop and just to see uh, what Julie's experience was like. Would be a pretty cool experience. And even just my time in Florida would be cool to go back and relive those moments, meeting Julie for the first time, uh, spending time with Chris and Elliot and Shannon and Danny and you and so many cool people down there would also be another fun moment. So those would be two times, I think. The birth one is a bit shorter, and then the time in Florida was a lot longer. But yeah, it'd be cool to relive both those experiences.
I want to go back a bit what you said before your relationship with Julie, that you said that sometimes you have difficulty having these strong, tougher conversations. Tell me, how is it for you? Did it took strength for you to admit that you're not good at that, and how are you working on that? Like maybe if it's too private, don't name me any examples, but can you paint a picture of like how is it for you? Did it took strength to you to admit that actually and to work on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's really helpful having her as a partner because she's very open and she is really good at getting into like more difficult conversations and having them. Whereas I'm by nature, I would just avoid them, which is not beneficial. And that's something I've had to learn. And probably what's been most helpful for us is going to see a therapist together and learning how to communicate in a way that is not doesn't seem critical of the other person or doesn't seem like you're attacking them or trying to make them feel bad, but you're able to come to conclusions and see things from their perspective in a better way. So just having someone there to kind of coach us through the way we talk to each other, the way we interact, and the way we deal with conflict has been really helpful. I would say that's been the most beneficial thing. And then yeah, it's like I said, it's always hard for me. Like anytime we have a therapy session, I don't want to do it. But then once we finish it, I'm like, oh, that was really good and very helpful. And I would encourage anyone who is in a relationship to do that. Go see someone who can, even if you don't have significant issues, just go see someone who can help you interact in a better way because we get coaches for everything, right? We get coaches for athletics, we get coaches to help us in business, we get coaches to help us in every area of life except for our relationships. So I think if your relationship is something that's important to you, then seeing a therapist or seeing even just someone who's a coach who can help you is something that's really beneficial. Um, so for me, that's been the most helpful because, like I said, I'm not naturally the most open person, but having Julie as a partner and then having those opportunities to talk with someone else has been really, really
Well,
helpful.
how is it for you that moment when you feel like you don't want to do it? It's, I imagine it's like in a swimming practice, right? You think the pool is cold and you don't want to get in and you don't want to get in, but you just have to jump into that pool, start swimming, and the water is just fine. How is it for you? Can you describe that, like that moment before you are like, I don't want to do this, but like all of a sudden you wind up in that situation where you are actually doing it, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And that's the thing too. Like I felt that feeling so many times before, like even before training, sometimes, like you said, you don't want to jump in the pool or you don't want to start your warm up or you're feeling tired and you just don't want to do it. You know, it's going to be hard. And I think that's what it is. Like it's the exact same feeling before training or before anything that you know is going to demand a lot of you. That's going to be difficult in some ways. That's going to require you to be vulnerable, which happens in training. Like we are vulnerable in training because we're trying to push for our limits and we may find that we have a weakness or we may find that we're not able to do something. So it's just exposing yourself and making yourself vulnerable that most of us have an aversion to. But the more you put yourself in situations where you do have to be vulnerable and you do have to expose yourself in some ways, the more comfortable you get with that. And it's not to say that you're always going to be psyched and ready to jump in that cold pool, but learning to just do it over and over again is something that has helped me. And like it's not something that comes naturally to me. It's been a lot of hard work being more vulnerable, and I'm still learning. Like it's still hard for me, but I have found that it's really beneficial.
Can you tell me more about the teachers that you have had in your life? Maybe name like a greatest teacher that you have had, or a great teaching moment, like not a physical person, but maybe a moment that has been like a great source of teaching for you that has taught you a lot in your life. Maybe something like that. It could be like, I call it your greatest teacher, but like it could be both, you know, a real person, or it could be a moment or event.
Great question. And I would say that Julie has been my greatest teacher because when you're in a relationship with someone, you see a lot of yourself in the other person. They are kind of a reflection of you. And that's the same with all our relationships with friends and family. We see the things that we love in ourselves and things that we might not love so much in ourselves in those other people. They are a reflection of us back to us. So when you're in a relationship with someone and you're with them 24/7, then you constantly see yourself reflected in them. And that's been a and you also see the things that you lack. Like she's much more, like I said, emotional, and she's much more intuitive and in tune with her emotions and open and honest and all these things. And so for me, just being around her all the time, I've had to learn so much about myself. I've learned so much about the things I'm not so good at and need to get better at. And I've learned what my strengths are. So for me, I would say she has been my greatest teacher in terms of getting in touch with my heart, getting in touch with my emotions, getting in touch with who I want to be and who I want to portray myself as in the world. And yeah, she's definitely been my greatest teacher in terms of also how disciplined she is, how great she is as a mother, how successful she is with her business, her podcast, the things that she does that are creative. And yeah, I'm always learning from her and I'm always learning about myself from her as well, because I see those reflections every day.
If you had the exclusive opportunity to ask a question to someone, you know, whether that person would be live or already passed away or actually may not be in this world yet, who would you like to ask that question? And what would be the question?
Oh, there's a lot of people. Let's go with, just to keep with the theme of this podcast, let's go with Kobe.
All right, all right. Yeah. I
And
think
I
that
would
was the last time you said the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I did. And I would say, I don't remember what my question was last time for him, but I would say, what, like knowing if you knew that you were going to leave the earth prematurely, what is something that you would have devoted more time to when you were here? Because he was someone who devoted a lot of time to a lot of different things. And it seems like he had a reason for doing that. So I would wonder if he knew that he wasn't going to be around for so long, would there be something that he would have done differently in terms of whether that was like pursuing something different or putting his energy into a different avenue? What would that be? Or would he just keep things the same? I would be interested to know that.
All right. Maybe you have a question for me.
Ooh, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned, or what would you say is, yeah, what's the biggest lesson and then what's the greatest skill you've improved on in your time as a podcaster, as an interviewer?
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I would say communication, probably, because there's so much communication leading up to that interview, or just getting that interviewee, or and then afterwards as well. There's communication with that as well. How you gonna edit that or post that, and so on. And just being a better communicator. I remember people sometimes ask me this question when about like which interview has like influenced you or stuck to you from all the interviews you've done. And I always, it's hard for me because like I'm shocked how many I've done already in such a relatively short time. But at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but like, of course, I like put in so much time and effort in that. And of course, there have to be that many. And then, but there's this one interview that I did. It was like one of, in this cycle, like one of the first interviews, and it was this guy that actually has worked in public presentation and hosting events and so on. And he helped me with like these things, how to better my language and things of that nature. And I was, and the title of that language, if I translate it from Latvian, is "The Road Never Ends." And that's something that I like understood from the interviews as well. Like I hear these stories. It's also, you know, hearing. Your communication is not just only what you tell; it's what you hear, and it's just the story never ends with you as well.
Mhm.
You were one person. You were, you know, there were times where you were just, you know, as you said, an athlete and maybe lost the track of sports when you finished being like in those organized sports. Then you moved on to weightlifting and then firefighting as well. And there's somewhere in the middle, and the road never ends. You develop into this new person that now is a father, right? Which you weren't like 5 years ago when we were together, like in Florida, right? So that's something that, you know, the communication part, and then the uh, hit of life, you know, of reality, that the road never ends. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good one. And I think we have this idea that we'll do something and then we'll be like, oh, I did it. Like I'm set,
Yeah.
all good. But that never happens. Like you have to continuously do the things, whether that's like you don't go to the track one day and you're like, I'm gonna run a couple sprints and then I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna reach my peak, right? You have to go day after day and do different things, whether that's with meditation or writing or being an interviewer. Like you can have to continuously do that thing to continue to grow and to have the feelings that keep you going. So yeah, the road never ends. I think that's an awesome way to put it, because you can get caught in that trap of thinking like, once I'm gonna get somewhere and then I'm gonna feel complete, but you never will. Like you always have to be moving forward, pushing forwards.
Yeah, I think it's somewhat the mindset also that Tim Grover talks about, like in his previous book, Relentless, and the new book, Winning. I actually ordered it, and I think it got to my mail just today. I have to, like, after this
Oh, nice.
interview, I have to like go and take it out of the mailbox. Yeah, and I'm gonna probably post some stuff from that book. But yeah, and he also speaks about, like, you know, for example, you mentioned Kobe. You know, he was done with that thing, and then it's not like, oh, can rest forever right now. He said that Kobe said, rest at the end, not in the middle, right? You know, from one thing, it was like already the movie thing. He was successful, super successful in that. Unfortunately, we were not able to see like maybe even more, but so on. But like, it's like one thing done, next. What's next, right? And you know,
Mm.
that's what Tim Grover has mentioned as well in his books as well. So yeah. Thank you, Mark. I know we're kind of time constricted right now, and I don't want to like drag this too much out. And maybe you have like some welcoming, inspiring words or good wishes for everybody to kind of wrap this thing up until the next installment of Mark and Axel.
Firing words, I would just say, don't care what other people are doing or what you think they think you should do. Just do what you enjoy, and constantly be looking for the things that bring you fulfillment, that make you feel good about yourself, that you have fun with. So don't feel like you have to read certain books because everyone's reading them. Just read the kind of books you enjoy, right? And don't feel like you have to do certain things in the gym or pursue certain things in your career. Find the things that light you on fire and that get you excited, and focus on those things, even if they're things that no one else likes.
All right. Thank you for this time with me right now. And I wish you all the best, your family all the best, and see you another time, right?
Awesome, man. Thanks so much.
All right.
Thank you for watching this interview till the end. I hope you enjoyed the interview, and I hope you will find interesting interviews as well on my channel and some of the podcasts that Mark has recorded as well. The links are in the description. I also encourage you to follow me now on TikTok. You can find me on AXEL Industries there and see little snippets of other interviews there. So I hope you will be the best version of yourself, and see you on the other side.